Disclaimer. In the video you're about to watch, there's fuel leaking from the fuel pressure regulator directly down onto my distributor. I didn't notice until editing the video that the fuel was leaking, and it's because of the bracket on the fuel pressure regulator is either bent or angled from the factory for a 940, and it wasn't seated all the way into the fuel rail. Alright, so where I left off with you guys was probably somewhere in the middle of finishing up the accumulator mod, and that's about all you know. So I finished the accumulator mod and put the transmission and the engine back in the car, but what I did not know at the time was that the flywheel needed to be clocked in a specific manner to the crank sensor for the car to start. So I installed the entire engine and transmission, all the fluids, and couldn't get the car to start. Pretty much immediately realized after checking the timing that I probably put the flex plate on wrong. So I had to take the transmission back out and correct the flex plate. There is a specific way that it needs to go, so that if you ever do this job, you want to go ahead and double check and make sure you get that flex plate or that flywheel on correctly before you do the mistake like I did and a couple other turbo brickers and have to tear your assembly back apart. So moving on from that, I'd say the next biggest challenge was routing these turbo lines and shit, these intercooler pipes. This is kind of like a custom setup because the guy who I bought this from didn't include this hose coming from the turbo to the intercooler. So I had to kind of fabricable that together. Although he did give me almost everything I did need from the 940 turbo. But the 940 engine bay must be a lot bigger than the 240 because all these hoses and pipes I had to shorten up a little bit because they're all a little bit too long, including the coolant hoses from the 940 and these boost elbows here and here. But what I did end up doing was getting this charge pipe here out of a 740 turbo, and it's actually a bigger diameter and it's a little bit better of a fit. So I got that shit all together. I'll take a little quick look at my cooling fan relay and the wiring with that. So I got some jackets off of cars at the junkyard, some heat shrink jackets or whatever you want to call them, and wrapped all my wiring so that it looks at least a little bit professional. We got one ground going to the body right there, and one positive going to the battery there, and that's running my fan. The fan hasn't had any problems yet. So we also got down in there, you could see the sensor body that I got from Amazon.com, which is that little black piece in between the hoses there. And then that's actually a coolant temperature sensor from the 850 that I had left over. So that works just fine in there. Right here was kind of a little tricky area to do. If you have a 240, then you know that the coolant reservoir usually sits right about here. And I was kind of planning for my air filter to sit in here, but it was really kinking this OEM inlet tube. It wasn't giving me a lot of volume inside there, so I kind of wanted to let this thing go naturally where it was, and I removed the bracketry for the overflow tank. This is a 740 tank. Removed the bracketry for that, and I actually welded on, if you could see. Now you can't see the welds, but I welded a little piece of stainless steel on there, a couple zip ties, and I repositioned that. So after that, I had some rerouting of these coolant or oil lines that go to the cooler for the transmission. It wasn't a big deal there. I just kind of did some hand bending and angling, and everything went into where it goes. And then I went on to hooking up my boost hoses. And this here goes directly to the manifold. This is going to my boost gauge. And we have the old you-know-what right there, manual boost controller. I think right now, being that I got a regular old Volvo boost gauge in there, I think I'm running about 7 to 10 PSI. I don't have anything with numbers. And we'll go for a ride here and show you what's going on. But pretty much it's been acting pretty good for the Plus T swap. The only complaint that I have is that the transmission seems to want to shift up into third gear or top gear really quickly And I think that might have a little bit to do with my kickdown cable that I replaced here. I did adjust it again once. It's this lower cable here. But I'm still kind of playing with it to get the car to shift how I want it to. But being that I did that accumulator mod, I'm not really sure if I might have fucked something up or I just need to keep fucking with that kickdown cable. But the transmission shifts good, and it does shift nice and crisp like I said it was going to. So no real drivability issues. I'll give you a couple tags on the throttle here. Let's go for a ride. Oh yeah, and we got the lowering springs too. Got them going. Alright, so now I want to get on to the complaints I have so far about the Plus T swap. I got my buddy Floyd in the back seat. I don't know if he's going to poke his head out. But what I'm having happen here, I mean, I've kind of been having this issue since I put the spacers on the wheels, is that now that I got these lowering springs on, the rear end, the one tire in the rear end keeps rubbing on the wheel well. And a lot of people just roll their fenders or their quarter panels and cut the lip off or something like that. I don't really want to alter the body of the car, but I'm probably going to end up doing it. When I had the original stock rear springs in there and I put these 1-inch spacers on from IPD, it immediately started rubbing on the passenger side rear, and my rear axle isn't lined up properly. It's, you know, I need new trailing arm bushings to get it nice and centered. So as of right now, it's poked out way too far towards the passenger side. And anytime I hit a bump, especially if I got a passenger in, you know, in the passenger seat, it's just fucking, it's just rubbing on that tire. And now that I put the lowering springs on, it's really, you know, almost every single curvature of the fucking earth, I'm getting tire contact in the wheel well. So, you know, it's a little lower than I would like it to be. It looks good from the outside and it handles good, but I would almost rather have my wagon overload springs that I had on the rear of this before, which was just a set of springs out of a wagon from the junkyard, and they didn't really give it a noticeable lift, but I was able to have a full tank of fuel and 200-300 pounds of carpenter's tools in the trunk and still not, you know, bottom out or get any kind of tire contact because I had those stiffer springs. So I'm kind of split decision between if I want to go back to the wagon springs or not, but we'll leave that there. The other thing I'm having is with the transmission, where this thing wants to be, basically it wants to be in third gear overdrive as soon as possible. Well, it kind of seems like sooner than it used to when it was naturally aspirated. So I'll start from a stop, and if you just give it gentle throttle, like normal driving throttle, it just goes first, second, third, you know, real quick gets into third gear. And then if you want to give it any power or you need to go up a hill or anything, it wants to stay locked into third gear. You really got to stab the gas pedal for it to downshift. So I wasn't really having those symptoms before. So I still want to play with that kickdown cable and see if I can get this thing shifting how I like it to. But in the meantime, I'll just pull it right back into second gear and it kicks up, and, you know, then I put it back into drive. So I kind of play with the gears a little bit, and you know, from a dead stop, if I put it back in first and run through the gears, shut off overdrive, turned it on, it gets a pretty decent 0 to 60 time, and you can feel that turbo pulling pretty good. The next thing I want to do, once I make sure this thing isn't totally fucked, is put some bigger injectors in it. I'm going to put some white injectors in there, and I'm going to see if I can get an adjustable cam gear, you know, a brand new one. I'm looking at IPD, like $130 for this adjustable cam gear, and a lot of the reviews I'm seeing is that these aluminum cam gears are actually wearing down, the belt's wearing it down from debris in there, you know, and they're, I don't know if they're ruined, but I've seen these pictures going around Volvo speed, and I kind of want to stay away from the aluminum cam gear if I can. So might look into getting 5 degrees of timing. I know there's a way that you can modify the stock gear so that you can advance the timing, so I might look into the stock gear modification. and that'll be about it. Some timing and some bigger injectors, and you know, if necessary, we'll go to a performance fuel pump as well. Right now, it's still got the OEM pump in the tank and pump underneath the middle of the car. So with these 240s, when you go to a performance pump, what I'm pretty sure the guys are doing is totally ditching the pump in the middle of the car and just taking that in-tank pump and replacing it with something that's a higher volume, higher flow. So we're going to look into that as well if we're running out of fuel. I do got the boost gauge set up here, and I got the air fuel gauge set up. We'll spin the camera around and put some boost on it and show you how she runs. Okay, so we're at a pretty mild 40 miles an hour here. I'm in overdrive. Let's see if I just kick it down into 4th gear, what happens. Overdrive. Staying hard on the throttle. It ain't bad for an old fucking boat. Alright, so we did a little pull. And, you know, I wasn't really going all out or anything like that. I got the dog in the car here, and I'm videographizing with one hand. But, you know, the car does pull a little bit. I'm satisfied with what we've done so far. But what I would like to do is add some timing and some fuel to this thing. And I know the turbo has more... the turbo has more ass in it, you know. It's got some more power that it can make here. And so does the engine. So we're gonna still turn up the boost a little bit here, and we'll get back with another video and probably mount the GoPro in here and really let her have it and see if she goes lean, or you know what we can do. But that's what we're doing so far. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.